Hi, everyone. I am Sarita Willingham. I am the founder and CEO of SJW Logistics. We are a full service 3PL. So we have warehousing, freight transportation. We have a brokerage business as well as order fulfillment services. My company has over 13 semi trucks over the road, as well as 22,000 square foot warehouse. I've been doing this since 2017. We didn't expand into a full service 3PL until 2020. So I've had the pleasure of going through the ups and downs, still going through some downs now with the current economy, like most businesses or small businesses are going through. But I am here to share my knowledge because I get calls all the time saying, hey, how did you get started? How can I get into the trucking industry? I want to get started into the trucking industry, but I don't know where to start. So I get all those different questions. And then the other questions I get are for people that are already established. They ask me, well, how can I grow my business to a full service 3PL? I will tell people it is challenging. It does not happen overnight, but it can be a very rewarding business. It really can. And I started with one truck. That is what the trucking streets always tell people. Hey, buy your truck, put a driver in it, and then, you can make a lot of money. I did just that. I bought a truck, I put a driver in it, and I made no money. So my truck burned down within the first year. And look where I'm at now. I am still here. So my goal today is to tell people multiple ways to enter the industry, multiple ways to expand into the industry as well, and how you can be successful in this industry. Any questions about that? Or any questions for me getting started? If not, we'll go ahead on and get started. Let me know if everyone can see my screen okay. All right, so let's talk trucking. Let's talk about this trucking and logistics industry. So the agenda today, we're going to start out talking about what's most common: brokers versus dispatchers, owner operators versus carriers. So we're going to talk about carrier compliance, leasing equipment, maintenance, and then I have a special that we're going to talk about as we get toward the end as well. So starting out, let's talk about, this slide is packed, but let's talk about what a freight broker is versus a dispatcher. I get so many people, they'll tell me they want to learn how to dispatch, but then they have brokers just set up, or they have brokers just set up, but then they don't know how to dispatch. Freight brokers and dispatchers are two different things. A dispatcher that is a dispatcher only cannot be a freight broker, but a freight broker can be a dispatcher. A freight broker can dispatch. So that confuses people a lot with the industry. I advise people all the time, educate yourself on the difference. But let me tell you, for a freight dispatcher, it's one of the easiest, most profitable professions in the transportation industry. It can provide you with a steady income and other pleasures. But and that line is in the wrong. It's a freight brokers are third-party individuals who connect shippers and carriers and oversee freight transportation. Dispatchers do the same thing. I'm sorry for that typo, but they make money from the load gross. So with a dispatcher, one thing that I want to say for as a dispatcher, it's the most easiest and profitable, but it's also the way to learn the industry. You cannot get past the industry without learning dispatching. So I don't care what you do, whether it's warehousing, whether it's driving the truck, or just being a freight broker, dispatching touches everything. So for those, and most of the time it's pretty inexpensive to learn dispatching, but like I say, it's one of the ways you could definitely grow in the industry as well, but you'll learn so much. I bought my first truck and I put the driver in it, and he was sitting there like, okay, you have me a load? He was like, you gonna dispatch me a load? And I was like, what do you mean by dispatch you a load? Like, he was like, yeah, you gotta go find a load. So I was very naive when I started in the trucking industry, even though I worked for a 3PL, because I was on the technology side. I was so far up, I didn't know like the bottom foundation. But dispatchers is one of the easiest, most profitable way, but it's the least an inexpensive way to get started in the industry. And I know some very successful dispatching companies that that have grown to where they're making 6 figures, some 7 figures, just as a dispatching company. So with freight brokers, that's what my little third line here should have been. Freight brokers are third-party individuals who connect shippers and carriers and oversee freight transportation, but they are legally required to obtain a brokerage authority with the Department of Transportation, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So that's the biggest difference between a dispatcher and a freight broker, is that they have to have a license. They have to have a bond. A freight broker does. A dispatcher, they don't have to have any license, bond, insurance, or anything for that nature. A freight broker profits a percentage of the net from the carrier and the customer. We'll get into that in just a second. But one thing about both of them, neither logistics brokers or dispatchers take physical possession of the freight. They are both non-asset based. So to be a dispatcher or to be a freight broker, you do not have to have possession. You don't own any assets. That's probably the beauty of it, is that you don't own any assets. Any questions about that so far before I get into how they make their money from load gross versus how the freight brokers make their money? Okay, you all gonna be quiet. I'll get y'all to ask some questions a little bit later. But with the dispatcher, just say for instance, we'll use my little scenario down here. The customer is paying $1,000. And the broker books the load with the carrier for $800. Well, as a dispatcher, you would make your money with whatever percentage you're charging to dispatch that load. So if you're charging that carrier 5%, 10%, whatever you're charging them, you'll get your money based off that $1,000. As a broker, if your customer is paying $1,000 and you book the load with the carrier, then as a broker, you get the difference of that $800 and $1,000, which would be $200. So that's one thing that most dispatchers like, is that they don't have to really negotiate or try to say, well, can you take the load for this or can you take the load for that? Because that whatever that dispatcher books that load for, their 10% is their 10%, their 13% is their 13%. Whatever they charge is their percentage off the gross. Versus a broker, if that broker is trying to make $300, he's gonna have to find, or she's gonna have to find a carrier to take that load for $700. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, can I so just trying to make sure you all understand, but both ways can enter the profession. I would say to start up cost estimated as a dispatcher, you may end up paying anywhere about $500 or less. Just depends on how elaborate you want to get as a dispatcher. Freight broker, you may end up paying $2,000 or less to get started as a freight broker. So the cost is different as well. There are no questions about that. We're going to move on to the next slide here. And we're going to talk about a owner operator versus a carrier. So most people are familiar with owner operators because that's the most common thing you hear out here, is that I'm an owner operator. I own my truck or I'm leasing my truck. To whether they lease the truck or own the truck, they're still an owner operator. A motor carrier authority, which owner operators have to have, is what is required by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, so FMCSA. I would say anybody that wants to learn about the trucking industry, become familiar with FMCSA. They can make or break the industry. They put out a lot of regulations that control the industry that can make it tough for businesses that are operational or starting into that industry. But when an owner operator says he leases his truck, they can lease on to a company or they can act independently. So they can lease on to a company that already has their motor carrier authority, which is what you'll hear people say, I have my own MC and DOT number. That's how you can relate it to what people are talking about. Or you'll hear them say, I'm leased on to a company. I work for JB Hunt, I work for Snyder, I work for XPO. So you'll hear I work for SJW, you know, if you've heard my name before. But you'll hear people say that are leased on to a company. Again, that person, they own the expenses for that truck when they say they're an owner operator. They're paying for the maintenance, the fuel, and all of that good stuff. If as a carrier, when you have your MC number, you're still considered a carrier. So whether you work for a company or you have your own MC and DOT number, you're still considered a carrier. That confuses people a lot in this industry because they'll say, well, what's the difference between a carrier and an owner operator? Well, if anybody has their MC number and DOT number, they're going to be called a carrier regardless of whether they're a one-man show or they have multiple trucks. My company is considered a carrier company and not an owner operator company because, my company is considered a carrier versus an owner operator because I'm not a one-man show where I just own and operate my own truck. I don't drive the truck. So my company overall is considered a carrier or a 3PL. Any questions about that? Tammy said, but the owner operator doesn't have to have an active authority. No, they can lease on to someone else that has an active authority. Great question. However, in order to operate to make money, they're either going to have an active authority or again lease on to someone that has the authority to operate. This is another way you can enter the trucking industry. You can buy a truck and let me just tell you, all equipment does not require CDL to get into the trucking industry. You can buy a minivan and lease on to Amazon and do a route. That's the most common one people know. You can buy a minivan and start a courier service where you pick up and deliver small packages. You can buy a box truck. All box trucks do not require CDLs. The only time you get into CDLs is when they get into the equipment types and whether they have air brakes and all that good stuff that I'm not going to go too deep in. You can get into the trucking industry by buying a truck or buying some equipment and putting a driver in it and having them work for you. I will tell people, if you do go that route, learn splits, learn how it works. I know a real common one that's from when I was growing up was, I'm going to get a driver and I'm going to do a 50-50 split out the fuel. In today's time, being that expenses are so high, 50-50 split out the fuel does not work for my company, but hey, it may work for your company if you decide to go that route, if you enter the trucking industry with assets. But when you become an owner operator, a carrier, that's when you're known to be asset based. So you'll hear that question quite often as well, where people ask you, are you asset based or not asset based? Most of the time when they're asking if you're asset based, they're asking if you own equipment versus non-asset based. That's when you probably, they put you in the category of being a dispatcher or a broker. And Tammy said, okay, so carrier can be a carrier and an owner operator. Yes, they could be considered a carrier and an owner operator. That is true. Because anytime a person has the MC number, they're automatically in the carrier category. Any other questions about an owner operator versus a carrier and buying equipment? And one thing I will tell people, this is a tip in today's economy. Okay, cool. You just purchased a hot shot. In today's economy, leasing is becoming more attractive to get into the trucking industry. Before, it was a turn off to lease because you get long terms, you're stuck with a high note every month, and you may be stuck with that for 3 to 5 years. Well, because of the supply chain shortages and issues, leasing has become very attractive when starting out. If you have the credit and business model set up to go lease equipment with a company, yes, the note may be high, especially on the semi-truck side where you may pay $3,000 to $4,000 a month, but most of the time you don't have to pay a down payment. Anytime you purchase a commercial equipment and you're financing it outright, you have to pay a down payment. So that's the difference between lease versus purchase when you're getting into the asset-based side, is you want to consider how much cash do you have to put down versus how much is it going to cost you. Maintenance can be a thing that you want to consider if you decide to go the asset-based route. I can go on and on about asset because I spend a lot of money every day on assets, and I get phone calls of tires blowing out at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So I can go on and on about that, of things that you need to consider when you're going into the owner operator versus carrier side or purchasing equipment there. And I would tell anybody that's interested in purchasing equipment, make sure, I've heard stories of people say, well, I'm going to take my mechanic and let them look at the equipment before I purchase it. I did that. My truck still burned down a year later, okay? So it's not about taking a mechanic, because most mechanics gonna look at, does the truck crank up? Does it run? If it runs, they're gonna tell you, oh yeah, it's a good truck. Drivers are good. If you have a driver, go look at it. They're gonna tell you the same thing. If that truck crank up, there are no lights on the test drive. It's like going to buy a car off a lot. If it cranks up, you're gonna think that's a good car. You got a warranty on it. You think you're gonna be good to go. It's more to buying a truck that you need to consider than does it crank up and go. So just my advice on that. Any questions before we move on to the next slide? If not, we'll move on. So this is where what I just discussed were the traditional known ways to get into the trucking industry. Most people know freight brokers, dispatching, and purchasing equipment. A lot of times people don't think of carrier compliance. I see some people on here that have some good skills in HR and the human resource background, or managing people, or setting up processes, some project management experience. If you don't want to go the route of being a broker or a dispatcher, or you don't want to be, having assets to have bills come, carrier compliance is one of the most, in my opinion, I feel the most needed in the industry. There are a lot of things that people, especially over the last 2 years, have entered the industry and they just don't know. There's a list that comes out weekly about new authorities, people getting their new MC numbers, and they're going out of business, or they never get it acted, or they're getting it revoked because they're not learning or educating themselves on the compliance side of things they have to do and things they have to know to stay compliant and keep their authority active. So one way you could set up a consulting company for carrier compliance and educate individuals or businesses that are coming into the industry on not only just getting their company set up, but the compliance side. It's very important to know e-laws versus paper laws. When can you use them? And I wanted to say in here, which is not on here, e-laws are required for trucks that are 2000, that have 2000 the year motors or newer, and paper laws are for trucks that have 1999 motors or older. But just because that truck may be year 2000 or better does not mean they have to use e-log. Certain loads that drivers pull, i.e. agriculture loads, they could have a brand new 2022 truck and they don't have to use e-log for agriculture. So it's very important that people learn this kind of stuff when getting into the industry, and a lot of times they're not getting educated on it. And then with DOT compliance, that's huge, very huge. Annual inspections, pre-trip, post-trip, what weigh stations look for, different things like that. That's very important to learn when getting into the industry. And they also do, after you get your MC, you have a 1 year and you do an inspection where they go and look at you. Did you keep your proper books and all that? Just helping people pass that inspection in the first year. I'll be honest, I'm a very honest person. In my first year, I didn't set up my driver when he got started. My driver didn't take his drug test until about a month after he was already in the truck and driving. Well, per FMCSA, everybody needs to be drug tested before they get into the truck. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. He had a CDL, he met my qualifications, but hey, I got a slap on the hand. I didn't get fined, I got a warning, but you know, it was like, in the future, make sure all your drivers get a drug test before you put them in that truck. Now they've implemented drug and alcohol clearinghouse. A lot of people don't know they have to be in a consortium to do it, as a new carrier coming in, especially when they're a one-man show. Compliance, this is something you can educate people on. You can charge them per hour consulting, and you can make really good money because it's so needed in this industry, with that, and they're cracking down on it. And then you have HBUT, which I put the acronyms up there intentionally because I do like to give a little homework and research. But HBUT is heavy highway taxes. A lot of people don't know that the IRS charges them for the various equipment types. When you do have your motor carrier and DOT, you have to file a heavy highway 2290 form just to drive and pay, drive on these highways across the United States. And it's annually. A lot of people don't know they have to file that form until it's time to get their tag, which is their IRP. That's your license plate and registration. They don't know that until then, and then they end up back paying and paying taxes and fees because they did not get their heavy highway taxes within 30 days after putting their truck into service or their equipment into service. So just some things that, you know, people go through when entering the industry that they don't know. Compliance is huge. It is so huge, but it's the least thought about thing when people get started because they're so excited to get started. They've met the minimum qualifications, which is business setup, bank account, and insurance to get rolling. They don't think about, well, what all I got to do to maintain this. Martine asks, how large can these fines be? These fines, not having the proper compliance, can go anywhere from $1,000 to I've seen up to $15,000 on some people, or it can be a fine and they put you out of business. Does the DOT not include drug tests? That's a great question, Tammy. Your DOT physical does not include drug tests. No, it's totally separate. So one thing I'll say about this industry, I call it, there's a money-making line of business in everything. So getting your DOT number or getting your DOT physical, this has nothing to do with getting a drug test. That's totally separate. You'll hear people say, do you hire second chance drivers? This is for people that are already in this industry. And they're like, well, what is a second chance driver? That's a driver that has failed a drug test and their license has been demoted, and now they got a chance to get them back because they went through SAP program. Some people call it SAP, but it's Substance Abuse Program, not Substance Abuse Program. And people have to go through that to get their license back. Again, another thing you can add on the compliance, I can help you get your license back if you failed a drug test. I can't tell you how many people fail drug tests because they cannot leave that it's CBD, the oils and edibles, and all this stuff with THC or TCH. I don't smoke, so I don't know the right term, but they can't leave all this stuff alone with holding a CDL. I don't care if it's legal in any state. I don't care what state says you have a prescription for it for your seizures. It is a federal law. You cannot do any illegal substance and operate a commercial vehicle, not and hold a CDL. THC, there you go. Thanks, Ms. Val. Brian says legal, but not for us. Well, like I said, you can go to whatever state you want to go to and do your thing, but when you operate that commercial vehicle, you get caught, you got bigger problems. It's not legal on a federal level. Any questions about thinking of coming into the industry under compliance? If not, we'll move on to Brian said, when I'm talking about us, talking about CDL holders, that's, like I said, that's so true. CDL drivers cannot do it. I don't care what state it is, what state law approves it. Federal does not. And everyone knows federal overrides state. So another way, let's move on to the next way you can enter the trucking industry is buying equipment and leasing it out. I rent out my trailers. When I got started, I only had a truck. I did not have a dry van trailer, and I wanted to pull dry van freight. So someone started, he leased out me, it was the old trailer, it was probably 20 years old, but he leased it out to me for $600 a month, and that's what he specialized in, helping people who are just getting started, because the bigger companies, they're going to want to see 2 years of history, they're going to want to see your financials for 3 months, they're going to want to see that you're established and you can afford to pay for their equipment, even though it's going to be the same price there, but they want to see that. So I found a company that was leasing out trailers, and they were leasing it for $600 a month. And I said, oh, as I grew into the trucking industry, I had trailers I had purchased. And then I ended up, after being in business for over about 3 years, I ended up getting a contract with Duval Semi-Trailers, Star Leasing, and Bowman Trailers. So I no longer needed my personal trailers that I had bought. So I now lease out trailers to businesses that get started, and they need help with equipment to avoid doing power only. So I use my trailers to do that. So that's one way. Another way you can enter the industry if you just want to, don't want to be involved in day-to-day operations. You lease it out, collect your money every month, week, or however you want to do it, and then you can make money that way. You can buy trucks and lease them on to, I think Ryder has a program, as well as there's another company. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but they have a program where if you have trucks, you can lease them on, and they'll put drivers into them, and they'll pay you a weekly or monthly fee just to lease your trucks onto them and let people rent them out. And so the other thing I would say, if you are considering that, learn your equipment types and costs. Learn the equipment types and costs of what you want to purchase and what you want to lease out, and the type of insurance that you want to require. Very important that you want to require insurance, and you as the loss payee. If a person tells you they have trailer interchange, that's all well and good, because that covers the trailer. But when you're the person that's paying for it, you want to be the loss payee. That makes it like you own the physical damage insurance. So if something happened, you get paid first. Trailer interchange, you wouldn't get paid first. So learn the equipment and the insurance requirements and how much you're going to require that person to insure your equipment for, and make sure your certificate of insurance say loss payee if you're the owner of that equipment. That is very, very important to be a loss payee. Any questions about buying versus leasing equipment? I know it's a lot of information. I'm gonna take a break. Everybody doing okay? Any questions? I saw someone raise their hand. Go ahead.
I had a question. So if you were to lease like a dually truck and a trailer, would that be under buy equipment and lease it out for hot shot?
If you buy a dually, if you're leasing or renting, what are you trying to do again?
Like lease a dually truck and a trailer for hot shot. Would that be under the same thing as buy equipment and lease it out?
Are you leasing it to rent out to someone or for yourself?
No, I want it for myself.
No, that's different. That will come under what we talked about earlier, owner, operator, and carrier.
Okay.
You'll be under that account. This here buying equipment and leasing it out, that's an investor standpoint. If you were gonna get the equipment to lease it out to someone else and charge them for it, then, and I wouldn't recommend doing that with equipment you're renting or leasing, but that is where this come at as an investor. If you're just trying to make money off owning assets. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna move on to another way to enter the trucking industry is being a maintenance company. When I tell you the most popular today, that I'm sure I just cannot believe, if someone tell me they're not, I won't believe them, but I believe roadside people are multimillionaires because they charge $800 to change a tire that costed $200, okay? But I would say if you want to get into the industry and you say, well, I don't want to do any of those things, but I know how to work on equipment, or I have a team that can work on equipment, or I'll start a team that can work on equipment, because in any of these, you don't have to actually be the one that do it. I have a trucking company and I don't have a CDL. I've never had a CDL. So same with roadside service. Tires are the most common. You probably could get you a container of some Chinese tires, because that's what I feel all the tires are with Miami blowing out of Chinese tires. But you can have some tires shipped from overseas, start your roadside company and just be changing tires. I-16, I-75, I-20 in Georgia are very popular trucks. I always side the road with a blowout, including SJW trucks. But that is one way. Regions are very popular because systems, these trucks have this clean air system, as they call it. So if you want to invest into your roadside company and invest into the computer systems and licenses, that could be pretty expensive starting out, but it can be very profitable. I see some truck owners on this call here that know about that, because we've had conversations about, oh, we had to get our truck regen inside the road. We had to get a forced regen. So airlines, lights, coolant, oil, fuel, even down to DOT inspections. Those are some common things where I would say, you know, tires, airlines, light, coolant, oil, fuel, and DOT inspections. That's a cheaper way to start out with roadside service. I think a lot of roadside people got rich earlier this year when fuel was up, because a lot of people were running out of gas because they weren't paying. They were just trying to put in just enough to get to that stop. So those are some ways that you can enter the industry. It is a roadside service. And then the more expensive is a maintenance shop, if you actually get your brick and mortar building and did PM, DOT inspections, mechanical and electrical maintenance. One thing people are struggling with, maintenance shops are struggling. I've seen a lot of maintenance shops go out of business this year. Some I've worked with for since I've been in business, or over the last 2 years, is because with the supply chain shortages and parts not being manufactured, they're not able to make money, because maintenance shops, anybody with this type of service, you only make money once the truck or the equipment is repaired. So I will say, if you decide to go that route, do your research on, especially in this day and time, on what parts are still being manufactured to determine the services you're going to offer. Because I can tell you, I've had a truck sitting since, I've had 2 trucks sitting since May. One needs a motor rebuilt and the other one needs a computer system put in the truck. The computer system hasn't been manufactured since November of last year. And the motor, because it's an older truck, the motor head hasn't been manufactured since February of this year. And we keep waiting to see when they're going to start back manufacturing them. So I would give that advice from my own experience, that if you do decide you want to go and start out a maintenance company, it could be very profitable. You can make some very good money with, but you got to have the parts to make the money. Any questions about that? Not, we'll move on to the next slide here. I think we're getting close to the end. Yep, we're closing. So all this was to tell you there are multiple ways to enter the trucking industry. Hopefully you all, it put on a light bulb for you all to say, you know what, I never thought that you could get into logistics that way, or I never thought you could get into logistics this way. But there are multiple ways to enter the trucking industry in there. And what I would say, if you're thinking about entering the trucking industry, I would say get you a mentor Educate yourself. Very, very important to educate yourself. I educated myself, but I didn't educate myself enough, I feel. But I learned through trial and error, and I'm still here. And then start and expand your business. I expanded from one truck to multiple trucks into warehousing and made myself a full service 3PL. And so it can be done. It does take time, but it can be done, and it's very, very rewarding to be in this industry. And again, it's an $800 billion industry. So it's almost close to the government. It's not going away. There's plenty of money. No one's going to make more money than the other. There's enough money to go around. So I'm not afraid to share knowledge or anything to that nature because someone helped me as well. So I'm going to stop right here. Do we have any questions? This is the perfect time to ask me anything about my experience or anything you want to know. You're thinking about starting a trucking company. You want to lease, financing. I've been through a lot. I haven't been through it all, I don't feel, but I've been through a lot. Tammy, you have a question?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Let me trying to step outside. I'm sorry. I was trying to see, I was asking about I was telling you that I just purchased a hot shot and you mentioned about the what was it? About the drug test. I didn't know that I was trying to find out, like, I know you were saying about things that we can do to enter. I'm currently just started dispatching, so then I end up getting a hot shot. I'm gonna have my trailer. My anticipated date for the truck to go out is October the 17th. So I was I was thinking that I would probably want to gradually become a freight broker. So, like, is there like a time frame? Like, did I need to wait, or any suggestions, or how long I need to wait since I just started?
Well, that's the beauty about this industry. That's a great question, because with this industry, it's not like you have to go to school, pay tuition, and to enter into this industry. There, you have to pay money, but not tuition or classes, all that good stuff. It is recommended that if you want to be a freight broker, you do take a freight broker class to understand what all you need to know as a freight broker. But there's no waiting period. If you want to work on your freight brokerage, setting that up while you have your hot shot, or do it all at the same time, you can do that. It's no rule or wrong or right to when you get started on that. There are growing pains that you'll go through with anything, but there's no rule on when to get started.
Okay, so do you offer a freight broker class, right?
Yes, I have a freight broker group coaching class. It goes on for 3 months, and I teach you about getting started, set up, and we actually do freight brokering in the class and find customers and leads. So, but that class is actually in its last month. We only have 2 sessions left after today, and we won't have a new one started until January.
Okay, how much is the class?
The price that they said, it was $11.97 for those 3
Okay,
months.
okay. So when you said that it's for 3 months, like, so how would I have to come in person? Like, how will I attend?
It's virtual, and if Latanya if she can, you could put your email to Latanya in the chat. She can send you all the details about that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
And I see Bryant has a question. I'm looking for options to lease or rent a trailer, but can't afford to buy one cash. Any suggestions? Brian, how long have you been in business? While I'm waiting on Brian to answer that question, N. Phillips said, what's the best way for new dispatchers to find owner operators? Great question. The best way for new dispatchers to find owner operators is Facebook. Social media is your best free marketing tool that you can have as a dispatcher. There are groups. Groups are big on Facebook, and those groups are owner operator groups. They have dispatching groups. So just go and look up. If you're not on Facebook, get on Facebook and then look up those groups and become a part of them, and you'll see People posting all the time say, I'm looking for a dispatcher, but be honest, that's the biggest thing, because they will shut you down in those groups. But that is one way to find some. Anita says, do you offer dispatching and brokering courses? Yes, I do. You can go to www.logisticalmix.com and you can see the courses we do. The next course we have coming up, though, won't be dispatching or brokering. We're going to talk about what course we'll have coming, which is a 5-day trucking challenge that we're going to have for people that are interested in getting into the trucking industry, or they're already in there and they're interested in growing their trucking business. So we're going to do that next. I have another person that, can you recommend where we can purchase a hot shot? Unfortunately, I cannot recommend where you can purchase a hot shot, but I will say do your research on companies that sell hot shots. And you may want to talk with some people that already have hot shots, get in some hot shot Facebook groups so you can ask questions, so that way you could, purchase what works best for you. Tammy says she found carriers by going to parts stores. That's one way to find them. They always need parts. Brian said he's been in business since November doing power only for Amazon and different companies. Brian, it's going to be tough to go to a larger company since you've only been in business for a year. I know Penske and Ryder will lease you trailers, but they cost a lot of money. I would say look on Craigslist. That's where I started and found people that help small businesses with trailers for rent, and they don't go through all the requirements that the larger companies go through. All right, any other questions for me? Y'all had the questions coming in. And Phillips said, look at GSA auction as well for trailer. Yeah, the government always selling something. Any other questions for me? Thanks, Ms. Val. Tammy is on it. She got a driver, she got a truck, she picking up a trailer. Okay. Well, what we the next course, a lot of people ask me what's the next course we're going to offer. And our next course that we're going to offer is our 5-day trucking challenge. And what we're going to be going over in this course is going to be 5 days, Monday through Friday, 1 hour a day. And we're gonna go over starting, leasing versus buying. We're gonna go over financing, the pros and cons of financing, what technology is needed, load types. We're gonna take a deep dive into intermodal and drayage. So for people that do hot shot as well as semi trucks, intermodal and drayage has been popular, and it has saved a lot of companies in this supply chain crisis that we're going through, including my company. So we're going to definitely go into that, doing business with the UIA, intermodal and drayage. We're going to go over carrier compliance, things that is very important to know, whether you have your trucking company already or you're growing your trucking company. We're going to go over booking loads, negotiating loads, and then expand into a 3PL. And when we do the expansion into a 3PL, that is where I give a tour of the warehouse that I have and what we have stored in the warehouse. That is the biggest treat that everybody gets to see, is the actual inside of the warehouse and what we do and how that operation is ran as well. So that's one of the perks to taking my challenges, whether I do dispatching or trucking or whatever class that I have, is that we do tour the warehouse, because a lot of people have a lot of question about warehousing. And I can't say that warehousing, you do need to understand and know that in this industry, because most of the freight comes or goes into a warehouse. And for the 5-day trucking challenge, the course is going to be $495 that we'll be offering for the week of October the 17th through the 21st. And Latanya has put the Latanya has put the link in there on how to sign up for anyone that's in the 5-day dispatch, that want to join the 5-day dispatch challenge. I see Martine asks, how much do you charge to mentor someone one-on-one? It depends on the mentoring type. We start as low as $75 for 30 minutes. you can go online to sjwtrucking.com to the consulting section, and we have different categories to consult in, and based on that category, you'll see the different charges, whether you want to do 30 minutes to an hour. We are coming up with a mentoring program that is coming out soon, where we'll get to mentor people as well. Someone asked, do you cover how to join the UIIA where dredge opportunity? Yes, that is the treat to taking that class. I am going to cover the UIIA and the dredge opportunities, how to find them, who to contact, what load boards to look on, and how to be successful in the dredge community. You're welcome, Martine. Any questions about the 5-day trucking challenge?
Okay, I have a question. Can you reiterate again on about the dredge? Because I only do spot market freight right now, but I had a lot of people been asking me about the car hauling, and I had a lot of people ask me about the dredge. I know they have to have a tweet card, but I know it's other things that factors.
And that's one tip I'll give you all. Everybody think you got to have a tweet card to get into the port. No, you do not.
Oh.
So that's what I say. The 5-day trucking challenge is gonna give y'all some tips and some unknowns, some things we've learned through the ports that you could switch to, how to bid on loads, how to make money off the port, how you lose money off the port real quick. We're gonna get into that as well.
Can you tell me, are drayage opportunities in every state or no? Because I'm wondering, because I'm in a landlocked state, there's no sea or anything like that. We do have railway running in the state that I'm in, but I'm just wondering, would it even be an opportunity in the state that I'm in?
You said you were in Pennsylvania?
No, I'm in Tennessee, actually.
Tennessee? I thought it was a port in Tennessee, in Memphis.
Oh, area. I don't know. I was just thinking because we have no water that, so maybe.
Check it out. I thought it was a port up there somewhere in Tennessee, but I could be wrong, but you would look for where the nearest port is from you. So.
Oh, okay.
That's how you can get into drayage, because again, depending on the type of truck you buy, a driver does not have to be home every night. That's why they call it over the road. That's why they have showers and truck stops. It's a matter of finding a driver that's going to understand you need to stay out to work and make money, so I can make money, you can make money, and we could both be successful together.
Okay, I'm signing up. All right.
So any other questions for me? Latanya has put the consulting link in there, as well as the link to sign up for the 5-day trucking challenge. Like I said, it's going to be jam-packed. It's going to be full. We're going to teach you so much, whether you have a company or you're trying to grow a company. And then we're going to give a few bonuses. We do have some financing that we're going to, like I say, the financing piece is going to be the biggest thing we're going to talk about too, about getting financing for your equipment and what you have to go through to get it, and sometimes making that compromise. I want to tell everyone thank you for joining. I truly enjoyed educating you all on sharing my knowledge on how to get into the trucking industry and just sharing things people don't think about. Like I said, I see some very knowledgeable people, some people I know on the call that can go into this industry and definitely kill it. I'm telling you, there's enough money out there for everyone. It's finding your niche, sticking to it. It does get tough, but I love where we are, what we're becoming as a team, and all the things that you can get into in the industry. And it's like there's no wrong way to go. It always comes down to money with this industry. Are there any other questions for me? Thanks, Miss Karen, for joining. Miss Karen is 1-on-1. She actually does compliance in the trucking industry. So Miss Karen knows she worked with us and we trained her on compliance, and now she's a consultant. Miss Val is another one. She leased on to us. And then she grew and got her own authority, and now she's killing it in the trucking industry as she's expanding. She's made it a family business. You're welcome, Anita. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If there are not any other questions for me, I will give you all back the last 5 minutes of your day. If you do have questions, you can contact me at info@logisticalmix.com. LaTanya has put our email address in there. And again, we do have the trucking challenge coming up. We have a host of other things. Join our Facebook group. We share knowledge in there. It's called SJW Logistics on the Facebook group. And I wish you all the best of luck in entering the trucking industry. Thank you for your time.